A big problem that gets in the way of us making the best mix we can possibly make has to do with our ability to translate what other people are telling us because it all goes through our own filter. So, our filter, when I hear the word more, for me, it means something else than when you might hear the word more or less. When somebody like Chad Blake says use a little bit on a lot of plugins to me could mean way too many plugins. No matter how you look at it, a lot of plugins is probably not as many as I'm trying to use. And the reason I say that is because I come from a hybrid mixing workflow for a long time prior to now mixing all in the box. And what I've realized is it's a huge disadvantage to use so many plugins, and it's what I have a tendency to wanna do because I'm always sort of seeking the sound that I want. I'm seeking it, and every time I get a little bit of something closer, like a little more width, I'm happy, but it comes at a cost. I get a little more volume, I'm happy, but it comes at a cost. You're sacrificing dynamic range when you get more volume because you're limiting in order to get there or compressing in order to get there. Same thing with you add low end. Well, just by adding a lot more low end, you're essentially removing top end. These things aren't mutually exclusive. The more low end you have, that's probably all that's going to fit in your bus compressor or, in your final limiting stage. It winds up basically pushing other frequencies out of the way because you're putting too much of one frequency in. So, something I realized is because all of us are so different, when I hear the term more, I look at it like somebody who's an overeater. I eat a lot when I'm eating because I love food. There's so many of us, I think, who come from that mindset and then we go to mix and we're doing way too much. And because everything has a bit of a compromise, we're never really happy at the end, or at least this is what I've found a lot is that for a long time I wasn't happy until I started to look at it differently. I had to basically reset my understanding of what is too much and what a little or a lot is. Because Chad Blake's definition of a little on a lot of things is actually a lot more tame than my definition. When I hear that, I got plug in on plug in on plug in doing so many things. And I'm always thinking, all right, I should use more parallel or let's hit that harder. No, let's hit it less hard, but let's put twice as many things on it. My mix bus, I've got 2 channels of stuff on my mix bus now. Mix bus A into mix bus B just because I can't fit more than the 10 plugins on mix bus A. So, who knows what I'm talking about, right? If you come from that school where you're an overeater like me, you should do what I did, which is reset your entire understanding of how to work within the box. And we are actually going to undershoot. We're going to say, do the least amount of things you can possibly do in order to make a print of the mix, your first bounce of the mix, and then go listen to that in other places, in your car, out of your room. Because I also have a theory that most people don't know their room as well as they think they do. And I just feel this way because I don't know this room as well as I want to or think I do. And I'm always reminded of that because I'm in a new room that I've been in for the last 4 months or whatever. And with the speakers, new speakers. So it's like a double whammy. The speakers are new. The room is relatively new. And in the concept of new, I mean, I haven't spent years in this room. I haven't spent years on these speakers, not even one. So when I think about it, I'm like, double whammy. Then when you combine that with the fact that I'm an overeater, triple whammy. So it's like I'm doing way too much and I don't know the space. So what we're going to do is recalibrate by doing as little as we can possibly do. That means if you have to add 2 plugins on your mix bus, okay. Don't take it above 5, for example. That's the maximum if you're all in the box, right? And the reason I even say this is because before I mixed all in the box, I did so much less, because I felt like the gear was taking a lot of the load and I was able to hit things harder on the gear. So I was doing way less and I had the same workflow over and over and over again. In doing less, the amount of plugins I used after the gear on my mix bus were few and far between also. I mean, there was like probably 3 plugins. So what I'm basically saying is I want everyone to try this. If you're experiencing, not loving your mixes, if you do love what you're doing and not like pretend you love it, but really think it's the best you can do, which I think is a whole nother conversation on why artists like us do have a thing where we just always feel like we could do better. We're never really proud of ourselves. And this goes up all levels. The guys at the top, like when I hear Rich Costi talking about he would love to remix the Audio Slave record that everyone thinks sounds amazing. I mean, not everyone, but I do. I love that freaking thing. I'm sure there's some people out there who don't because it's an opinion thing, right? But I use some of those tracks as references because they sound so good. And when I think about how he's not happy with his work on a lot of the things he did, and he doesn't listen to his own records after he's made them for the most part, it's so interesting to me that on all levels, you're always going to be potentially the same person exactly that you are now, where you're just never really happy with your own work. It's just kind of amazing to me, or I should say the times you are happy is going to be a lot less of the time than you are really happy. And you could still be doing amazing work. And a big reason for that is because the crowd, the listener, has the easy job of never having the ability to compare it to anything else. Whereas you compare your version you have now to the version you made an hour before or a day before, the version with less bass, the version with more widening, the version with more mix bus compression, the version with 2 limiters, the version with the clipper before the limiter. I mean, essentially every time you make a tweak, you're comparing A or B and deciding should you keep the tweak or remove it and go back to where. So you're in a position where you always are going to think it could be better because you know how many choices you made. They get one option as a listener to listen and decide if it's good or bad. And I think it's important to understand that as the person doing the mixing, you won't ever really know if the version you did first is better than the version you did on the 5th or 8th or 10th time. You won't really know is a thing that took me years to realize, is that every version you make is going to be different, but the one that captures the most emotion might not be the one that sonically sounds the best. The one that sonically sounds the best might have way less dynamic range, or some version of what I'm saying where everything adds up to determine this whole, and you won't ever really know. Just like an artist, the person writing the song, recording it, you know how many times, like, the guy who's the artist wants his vocal to be, like, super affected, and the person who's doing the recording's like, "Man, if we make this thing any wetter, we're swimming in a sea of reverb here, and, I lose every bit of what you're saying, all the definition. I lose the words. So, like, can we compromise, or is it like, can I get you to rethink why you want it to be like we're swimming in a some giant ocean of reverb? Like, what's the point?" So, in a way, I think just like the artist most often doubts themselves, has experiences like some sort of imposter syndrome, with or without success attached to that word at all, because some people just feel like they're not who who they say they are, who they think they are. They're not as good as who they say they are, as who they think they are, regardless of if you've ever achieved an accolade or not. And then some people who get the accolades think, "Oh, I don't deserve to be here." So in one way or another, what happens is we don't really know if what we're doing is great. And if we let ourselves, we will doubt ourselves. And if we're mixing, how many times are we fooled by thinking, "Oh, yeah, this is a little better because of this." And we literally ignore the negative that thing we just added brings to the table, because everything is a compromise. Every tool you add. So for people like me and you who overdo things, because you got to know who you are, learn who you are. All right. I know I overdo things. It's part of my personality. I overdo things. And as a result, I put way too many plugins on things. Way too many. So I got to go back to the thinking that I used to apply when I was mixing with analog. I got to go back to that of as little as I can possibly do gets me a better result. And even with that concept, some people who think in the Chad Blake sense of a little bit on a lot of things, we might now be lined up, because I have so far I've overshot so far in my own head of what that means to do a little on a lot of things that I got everything going on, way too much. So all I gotta do is think like as little as I can possibly do, and now I might actually line up with Chad Blake's definition of a little on a lot of things. That's what I mean. It's just like so definition based. And if if you need to use like some kind of an analogy, like what we do is absolutely cooking. We're not baking, we're cooking. Because when you're baking, a lot of times all the ingredients you get are they're something you can predict. They're predictable. The flour most likely is if it's this kind of flour, it gets this kind of a result. So you need exactly this amount of sugar, this amount of salt, this amount of whatever to make the thing you're making, bake properly or whatever, right? On the other side, when you're cooking, there's no real sense of exactly what to put in, or at least that's how I cook, man. I'm cooking and I'm throwing in like, what does it feel like? I taste it, good or bad. And that's way more like what we're doing. Whereas the other way, you're not going to know if it's going to be good or bad till you bake the thing and then try it. Pre-baking it, you got a bunch of soupy nonsense stuff. I mean, I don't bake, but you get what I'm saying. So what I could say is it's so easy to oversalt something when you're cooking, and then no matter what you do, it's never going to be good. You literally have to start over in order to make that product edible after a certain point. Because even if you start taking things off, you're going to have to go back to the beginning and retrace all your steps because you've already oversalted, and now you're all messed up. So rather than ruin the mixes that you're working on by doing too much, you have to approach it from do as little as you can possibly do. Print it, listen to it somewhere else. Get out of your room because that'll tell you more. Some people, if you could do it on different sets of speakers within your room or a boombox, that's great. But also, there's nothing like going to some other place completely because your room may have inherent, it could be super quiet and dead in there. Well, what does it sound like when you're playing it like in the car and the windows are open and you get like some life in it? It'll change things. Like as soon as you open the windows, you lose top end. But if you play your song and leave the windows open, leave them closed, turn it up, turn it down, to even drive around, distract yourself a little bit. Let your brain sort of reset. Listen to it on a radio while you're working out or, in your headphones, different headphones. Like get out of where you're in and clear this. That's really why you want to not do it in your studio, in the room you're in. Just clear your mind a little bit. And then what is it that it's telling you? And then decide what to tweak. And I guarantee if you come at it from that point of view, what I found is I do so much less to tweak the problems, and it's so much closer to being what I want it to be. So for whatever reason, there's people I know like me out there because we are all very similar. And I'm an overdoer. So if you are too, I'm sure this can help you. And if you're somebody who likes to do almost nothing on your mixes, well, you don't need this advice. So you're doing well. As far as I'm concerned, people who look at it that way get way, way better results than people who overeat like I do. So, I know plenty of people who actually, they eat almost nothing. They eat like birds. I don't know how they do it. I can't visualize life like that because I am an overeater, So anyway, it's just like that with mixing. So we got to calibrate ourselves sometimes. Anyway, in honor of everyone who, gave up their lives for this country, I'm in the U.S. and today is Memorial Day. Just want to say thank you. All right. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. Questions, comments, likes, throw it in there. I appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button. You guys got this. Take it easy.